The 192nd day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Let's consider the main events of this day. The situation with the defensive of the armed forces of Ukraine on the city of Kherson remains extremely strange. Ukraine remains silent on the progress of the offensive. The reports of the General Staff of Ukraine speak only of the offensive of Russian troops in this direction on Vysokopolye and Potemkino. The operational command south of Ukraine speaks of air and artillery strikes on command and strongholds, trains and logistics and transport capacities of the enemy, but not about ground operations. As well as the head of the press center of the defense forces of southern Ukraine, Natalia Humeniuk, who said that as a result of the shelling of bridges by the Ukrainian armed forces, Russian troops lost the opportunity to transfer reserves across the Dnieper River. At the same time, they still have transport routes, but they are all under the fire control of the Ukrainian army. No one speaks about the course of the ground operation from official Ukrainian sources. Only the advisor to the head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Arestovich, urges everyone to wait, hinting that something important is happening in the south, but the results may not be fast. But the Russian side on a daily basis and in detail covers the course of events from its own, of course, point of view. The Russian Defense Ministry claims that the offensive has bogged down, attacks have been repulsed everywhere with heavy losses for the Ukrainian army. Russian Defense Minister Shoigu claims that the purpose of the actions of the Ukrainian armed forces in the south is to create in the west the illusion of Kiev's ability to resist Russia. Russian telegram channels write about the situation in the most detail, although, of course, there is no evidence for their stories, except for a video with damaged equipment, from which it is difficult to form a general impression of the situation at the front. According to them, the offensive of the armed forces of Ukraine has been stopped almost everywhere and positional battles are underway, and in some areas the Russian army has already launched a counteroffensive. With the exception of one direction near the settlement of Davidov Brod. There, on the first day, Ukrainian troops were able to achieve the greatest success, taking the village of Sukhoi-Stavik and a number of other settlements. And now they are trying to further wedge into the Russian defense line, entering the small village of Bezamennoy. At the same time, Russian telegram channels claimed that shortly after that, the village was razed to the ground by a massive bombardment by Russian aircraft. They also write about the dense fire of the Russians on the advanced detachments of the armed forces of Ukraine. But, I repeat, there is no other confirmation of this information. The Ukrainian military say that in the areas where they are located, the armed forces of Ukraine are really not conducting offensive operations and have switched to positional battles due to massive enemy fire. However, all this does not mean that the offensive will not be resumed. Two big bets have already been made on the strike on Kherson, and the whole world is closely watching it. The American Institute for the Study of War writes that Ukrainian attacks will not succeed or fail in a day or a week, signaling that offensive actions and attempts to break through the defenses of the Russian army will continue. As follows from the statements of Ukrainian officials, as well as from reports from the field, strikes continue to be carried out on crossings across the Dnieper River in order to cut off the supply of the Russian group. And they will certainly continue. Thus, the tactics of the Ukrainian troops, as far as one can judge, is to gradually push through the defense of the Russians while creating problems with the supply of ammunition and reserves. And, over time, this can lead to a weakening of the defense of the Russian army and force it to start retreating. But the question is, will Ukraine have enough strength? People, equipment, and ammunition under this constant pressure, the attacking side has, as a rule, more losses than during the defense. What forces Russia actually has on the right bank of the Dnieper River, it is known that in recent months a lot of troops have been transferred there, and whether it will really be possible to completely cut off the communications of the Russians across the Dnieper. Accordingly, the tactics of the Russians, as far as one can judge, are mirrored by the Ukrainian ones. Try to grind the advancing forces of Ukraine, which are conducting offensives, inflict heavy losses on them, and then, if possible, go on the counteroffensive and move the front line away from the Dnieper in order to secure the bridges from strikes. The German publication Deutsche Welle cites the opinion of Western experts on the situation in southern Ukraine. British expert Justin Crump believes that this is a quite significant combined arms offensive aimed at achieving at least a limited breakthrough of the front line with Russia. It looks like the scale of this offensive really corresponds to what the Ukrainian president wanted, but the situation at the front is still hidden by a smokescreen, he said. And Bradley Bowman of the American think tank Foundation for Democracies believes that Ukraine went on this offensive under pressure. Since January 2021, Ukraine has received $13.5 billion in military aid from the United States alone, and now Kyiv is under pressure as it is expected that the Ukrainian army will not only hold the defense, but also go on the offensive, Bowman said. The General Staff of Ukraine in today's report announced that enemy attacks were successfully repelled in the areas of the settlements of Bakhmutsko, Kodyma, Zaitsevo, Avdiivka, Mariinka, and Vermovka. The destruction of enemy manpower in the Zaporizhzhia direction was confirmed. According to intelligence, a convoy of trucks was heading towards Berdyansk. Shelling continued in all frontline cities, both with the help of aviation and cannon artillery. During the day, the aircraft of the defense forces made more than 40 sorties to support the actions of ground groups, during which several enemy command posts and an ammunition depot were destroyed. The Bayraktar unmanned aerial complex launched a missile attack, as a result of which the ammunition detonated and 2 enemy armored vehicles were destroyed. Rocket troops and artillery of Ukraine continue to carry out the tasks of counter-battery combat, disrupting the control and logistics systems of the enemy. So, more than 10 accumulations of manpower were hit, including 3 platoon strongholds. 3 anti-aircraft missile systems and several armored vehicles of the Russian troops were destroyed. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the defense in depth in the Donbass had been hacked and the settlement of Pesky had been captured, which, by the way, they had already announced. Meanwhile, the United States continues to discuss Putin's statement about plans to eliminate the anti-Russian enclave in Ukraine. According to the American Institute for the Study of War, this suggests that Putin has not abandoned his intentions to seize all of Ukraine. And he creates new forces to bring them into battle in the fall and winter of 2022. In Ukraine, they have already calculated how many Russians will be able to put up soldiers. Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman Vadim Skibitsky said that Russia could send another 350,000 soldiers to the war, who are now serving in Syria, Armenia, Tajikistan, and other places. At the same time, the issue of replenishing the ranks of the army is also serious for Ukraine. The country lost hundreds of thousands of dead in the war with Russia, said former general of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, first deputy commander of the Special Operations Forces Suri Krivonos. He did not reveal the source of his information. At the same time, he did not specify whether he meant losses among the military or among both the military and civilians. There are also more and more voices in the world that the conflict could spill out beyond the borders of Ukraine. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that the degree of U.S. involvement in military support for Kyiv is growing. The deputy head of the department, Ryabkov, said that this is a dangerous trend. According to him, the United States is separated by the thinnest line from becoming a party to the conflict in Ukraine. And unexpectedly, the Pope declared that humanity had entered the Third World War. Tomorrow you will remember the anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War, which had such a painful impact on the Polish people. And today we are experiencing the third. Let the memory of past experience push you to cultivate peace in yourself, in your family, in public and international life, Francis said, speaking at the Vatican. That's all for now. I'm waiting for your opinion in the comments. Please support the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you.